Picture this. You're at your college graduation. The air is electric, filled with the buzz of excitement and the rustle of polyester gowns. Your family is cheering so loud they're about to get escorted out by security. You did it. You survived 4 years of all-nighters, lukewarm ramen, and existential dread. You walk across that stage, you shake a hand you'll never remember, and you grab that diploma. It feels like a golden ticket, your official entry into adulthood and the professional world. You frame it. You hang it on the wall. It's a symbol of your hard work, your sacrifice, and your bright future. But what if I told you that piece of paper might be the most expensive thing you ever buy? For millions of American students, that diploma comes with a hidden price tag, a six-figure IOU that follows them for decades. Think about it. You wouldn't buy a car without knowing the total cost. You wouldn't sign a mortgage without reading every single line of the contract. Yet, we encourage 17-year-olds to sign up for loans that could financially cripple them before they've even had their first legal drink. This isn't just a cost of doing business, it's a national crisis hiding in plain sight, wrapped in the language of opportunity and aspiration. It's the dark secret of higher education, a debt sentence that begins right when your real life is supposed to. The story starts innocently enough. You fill out the FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid, which is anything but free and certainly not simple. You see a number, a big one, under cost of attendance. Your heart sinks. But then, like a superhero swooping in to save the day, the financial aid package arrives. It's filled with grants, scholarships, and the headliner student loans. It feels like a lifeline, a bridge to get you to the other side. They make it seem so easy, so normal. Everyone does it, they say, and they're not wrong. Over 43 million Americans are currently carrying student loan debt. That's more than the entire population of Canada. This isn't about scaring you away from college, it's about pulling back the curtain on a system that has turned the pursuit of knowledge into a high-stakes financial gamble. We tell young people that a college degree is the key to a better life, a pathway to the middle class. But we've rigged the game. We've created a labyrinth of interest rates, predatory lenders, and confusing repayment plans. The promise was that education would be a great equalizer. Instead, for so many, it has become the great anchor, weighing them down just as they're trying to set sail into the open waters of their future. Let's be clear, student loans weren't always the monster under the bed they are today. The original idea was actually pretty noble, born out of a moment of national panic and ambition. It's 1957. The Soviet Union launches Sputnik, the first artificial satellite. America collectively loses its mind. Suddenly, there's a massive push for the United States to catch up in science, math, and technology. To win the space race, we needed more engineers, more scientists, more brilliant minds. The government realized that talent wasn't just found in wealthy families, it was everywhere. The solution? The National Defense Education Act of 1958. This act was the genesis of the Federal Student Loan Program. It was designed to do one thing: make college accessible to smart, capable students who couldn't afford it. The government would lend money directly to colleges, who would then lend it to students in strategic fields like engineering and science. The loans had low interest rates, and in some cases, they were even forgivable if you became a teacher. It was an investment in young people, an investment in national security, and an investment in the future of the country. It was a tool to unlock potential, not a trap to ensnare it for profit. So, what happened? How did we get from this optimistic public good vision to the trillion-dollar crisis we have today? The shift was gradual, then sudden. Over the decades, the purpose of student lending began to change. It moved from a targeted government program to a massive, privatized industry. In the 1970s and 80s, banks and private lenders were brought into the picture, smelling profit. The government's role shifted from being the direct lender to being the guarantor. This meant that if a student defaulted, the government would pay the bank back. Suddenly, these loans were a risk-free investment for private companies. This new system created a perverse incentive. Lenders had every reason to give out as much money as possible, with little concern for whether the student could ever pay it back. After all, they were guaranteed to get their money one way or another. At the same time, colleges, seeing that students now had access to a seemingly endless fire hose of cash, started raising their tuition. And why wouldn't they? If the students could borrow more, the schools could charge more. It created a vicious cycle, a feedback loop of rising costs and rising debt. The American dream was no longer being funded, it was being financed. Today the numbers are staggering. We are staring down the barrel of a $1.7 trillion student loan crisis. That's more than the total amount of credit card debt in the entire country. It's more than the GDP of Australia. This isn't a small problem affecting a few people who made bad choices. This is a systemic failure on a colossal scale. The average student loan borrower graduates with nearly $30,000 in debt. For those who go on to graduate school for fields like medicine or law, that number can easily soar into the hundreds of thousands. These aren't just numbers on a spreadsheet, they represent delayed dreams and derailed lives. This debt bomb has profound consequences that ripple through our entire economy and society. It dictates where graduates can afford to live, forcing many to move back in with their parents. It dictates the jobs they take, pushing them toward high-paying corporate gigs instead of public service roles like teaching or social work. It delays major life milestones that we once considered a normal part of adulthood. People are putting off buying homes, starting businesses, getting married, and having children because they are shackled to their student debt. It's a powerful drag on economic growth, a wet blanket smothering the flames of entrepreneurship and innovation. The emotional and mental toll is just as devastating, if not more so. The constant stress of having a massive, unshakable debt hanging over your head is immense. It leads to anxiety, depression, and a pervasive sense of hopelessness. Imagine starting your adult life feeling like you're already losing. Imagine the shame and guilt that comes with struggling to make payments on a loan you were told was a good investment. This financial burden becomes an emotional one, impacting relationships, self-worth, and overall well-being. It's a silent struggle for millions, a private crisis that is rarely discussed openly but is felt deeply every single day. The system as it exists today is fundamentally broken. It was built on a series of well-intentioned policies that have been twisted and exploited over time. It has morphed into a complex web of government agencies, private lenders, loan servicers, and universities, each with their own interests. And lost in the middle of it all is the student, the very person the system was created to help. We are at a critical tipping point. We can no longer afford to ignore the dark truth about student loans. We have to understand how we got here, who is benefiting from this broken system, and what we can do to fix it before it's too late. Alright, let's break this down. How does this whole student loan thing actually work? It all starts with a form that sounds like a forgotten 90s boy band, FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid. You and your parents gather up your tax returns, your bank statements, and your will to live, and you fill out this beast of a document. The government crunches the numbers and spits out your EFC or expected family contribution. This is the magic number that colleges use to decide how much free money you get. It's supposed to be what your family can afford to pay, but for most people, it feels more like a randomly generated high score from a pinball machine. Based on that EFC, the college sends you a financial aid award letter. This is where the real shell game begins. It's a confusing mix of grants, which is free money you don't pay back, yay, scholarships, also free money, double yay, and work study, where you get a campus job that probably pays less than your daily coffee budget. And then, there it is, the main event, the loans. They're presented as aid, which is a Jedi mind trick of the highest order. Aid is supposed to help you. A loan, by definition, is something you have to pay back, usually with a little extra for the trouble. It's not a gift, it's a transaction. So you see this big number, let's say $10,000 in loans, and you think, okay, that's manageable. You sign the master promissory note, which is a legally binding contract that basically says you promise to pay this money back, even if you drop out, can't find a job, or decide to become a professional street mime. The money doesn't even go to you directly. It's sent straight to your college's financial aid office to cover tuition and fees, room and board. If there's anything left over, you get a refund check. It feels like you just won the lottery, but really you just took out a loan to pay for your own pizza and textbooks. The process is designed to be as smooth and frictionless as possible. They make it easy to say yes. You're 18. You're excited about going to your dream school, and this piece of paper is the only thing standing in your way. You click a few buttons, sign your name, and boom, you're in. No one sits you down to explain what a 6.8% interest rate really means over 10 or 20 years. No one shows you a chart of what your monthly payments will be. They just hand you the pen and tell you to sign on the dotted line. It's a system that preys on the optimism and inexperience of young people, getting them to commit to a lifetime of debt before they've even attended their first lecture. Now, not all loans are created equal. In the world of student debt, you've got two main players, two heavyweights battling it out for a piece of your future income. In one corner you have federal loans. These are the loans funded by the US government, by Uncle Sam himself. Think of them as the good guys, relatively speaking. They have fixed interest rates, which means the rate you get when you sign is the rate you have for life. They also come with certain protections like options for income-driven repayment plans, deferment if you lose your job, and even loan forgiveness programs for public service workers. It's not perfect, but there's a safety net. In the other corner, you have private loans. These are the loans you get from banks, credit unions, or online lenders like Sallie Mae or SoFi. Think of them as the unregulated Wild West of student debt. Private loans are a whole different animal. They often have variable interest rates, meaning your monthly payment could suddenly skyrocket if the market changes. They require a credit check, and since most 18-year-olds have the credit history of a newborn baby, they usually require a cosigner, aka mom or dad. This means your parents are now on the hook for your debt if you can't pay. It's a great way to turn a family dinner into a tense financial negotiation. The really scary part about private loans is the lack of protection. If you hit hard times, lose your job, get sick, face a global pandemic, private lenders are generally not as forgiving. They don't have to offer you income-driven repayment plans. Forbearance or deferment options are often limited and can come with a catch, like capitalizing the interest you don't pay. And forget about forgiveness programs. That's just not in their vocabulary. Their primary goal isn't to help you get an education, it's to make a profit for their shareholders. You are not a student to them, you are an investment, and they expect a return. So why would anyone take out a private loan? The simple answer is that federal loans have limits. The government will only lend you so much money each year, but as college tuition has exploded, that federal loan money often isn't enough to cover the full cost. This creates a gap that students need to fill, and who is waiting in the wings, ready to fill that gap with high-interest, low-protection loans? You guessed it, the private lenders. They market themselves as the solution, the friendly neighborhood bank that's here to help you achieve your dreams. But what they're really doing is profiting off a broken system they helped create. Let's rewind the tape. We talked about the National Defense Education Act of 1958. It was a noble idea. The government gave low-interest loans directly to students to create more rocket scientists. Simple. But then, in 1965, President Lyndon B. Johnson's Great Society programs expanded this with the Higher Education Act. This created the Guaranteed Student Loan Program. Instead of the government lending the money directly, they convinced private banks to do it by offering a guarantee. The government essentially told the banks, lend money to these kids. If they don't pay you back, don't worry, we will. This was a game changer, and not in a good way. It was like giving a casino a license to print money. Banks now had a risk-free, government-backed product. They could lend out as much as they wanted with zero fear of losing a dime. This opened the floodgates. To manage this new public-private partnership, the government created a new entity in 1972. It was called the Student Loan Marketing Association, but you probably know it by its much friendlier, almost folksy nickname, Sallie Mae. For decades, Sallie Mae was a quasi-governmental agency that bought and serviced these guaranteed loans. For a while, the system chugged along, but in the 1990s and 2000s, things went completely off the rails. Sallie Mae was fully privatized, turning it from a government-sponsored entity into a for-profit, publicly traded corporation with a duty to its shareholders, not to students. At the same time, Congress passed a series of laws that gave student loans special powers. Most notably, a 2005 bankruptcy reform bill made it nearly impossible to discharge student loan debt in bankruptcy. You could run up 6 figures in credit card debt on a wild Vegas weekend and wipe it clean. But that student loan you took out to become a history teacher? That's with you forever. This created the perfect storm. You had private lenders with a government guarantee, a privatized giant like Sallie Mae hungry for profits, and a product that was almost impossible to get rid of. What do you think happened next? Lenders, both federal and private, started handing out money like candy at a parade. Colleges, seeing all this easy money flowing to students, jacked up their prices year after year, knowing the loans would cover it. The system was no longer about access or national defense. It had become a full-blown financial industry, a debt machine where the student was just a cog. The original sin was inviting profit into a system meant for public good. So, you've signed the papers and the money is at your school. Your journey into debt has officially begun, but the real pain doesn't start until after you graduate. That's when you meet the two villains of this story: interest and capitalization. Interest is the price you pay for borrowing money. It's a percentage of your loan balance that gets added to your total debt. Even while you're in school, for most loan types, that interest is quietly piling up. So that $10,000 you borrowed for your freshman year, by the time you graduate, it might already be $12,000 before you've even made a single payment. It's like a taxi meter that's running even when you're stuck in traffic. But the real kicker is capitalization. This is one of the most diabolical concepts in finance. When you finish school or your grace period ends, all that unpaid interest that's been accumulating gets added to your principal loan balance. Now, you're paying interest on your interest. It's a debt snowball that can quickly turn into an avalanche. This is how someone can make payments for years and see their loan balance go up instead of down. It's a feature, not a bug of the system, designed to keep you on the hook for as long as possible, squeezing every last drop of interest out of you over the decades. And let's not forget the fees. Oh, the glorious fees. Many federal loans come with an origination fee, which is a percentage of the loan amount that's deducted before the money even gets to you. So if you borrow $10,000 with a 1% origination fee, you only get $9,900, but you have to pay back the full $10,000 plus interest. It's like ordering a pizza, and the delivery guy eats a slice on the way to your house but still charges you for the whole pie. Then there are late fees if you miss a payment, and collections fees if you go into default, which can add another 20 to 25% to your balance. It's a minefield of financial penalties. All of this is managed by a middleman you probably haven't even heard of, the loan servicer. These are the companies that send you the bills, process your payments, and manage your account. Companies like Navient, FedLoan, or Great Lakes. They are paid by the government to handle the logistics. The problem is, their incentives are often misaligned with yours. Their job is to collect payments, not to help you find the best repayment plan for your situation. This complex web of interest, capitalization, fees, and servicers creates a system that is incredibly difficult to navigate, leaving millions of borrowers trapped in a cycle of debt they may never escape. So, how did we get here? How did a college education go from being an affordable stepping stone to a luxury good that costs more than a house in some parts of the country? It's a simple question with a complicated and frankly infuriating answer. A huge part of the problem is that state governments, who used to be the primary funders of public universities, have been cutting back. Big time. Over the last few decades, state funding for higher education has been slashed. Think of it like this: your parents used to give you a decent allowance, but now they've cut it in half. You still have the same expenses, so what do? You have to find the money somewhere else. And where did colleges find that money? They found it in your pocket. As states pulled back, universities turned to tuition hikes to make up the difference. They saw a golden opportunity. The federal government, through the loan program, had effectively created a fire hose of cash pointed directly at students. So, colleges started raising their prices year after year after year, knowing that students could just borrow more to cover the cost. It created an arms race. One school builds a fancy new rock climbing wall or a lazy river, and the school down the street has to build one too, just to compete for students. And who pays for all these shiny new amenities? You do, through your tuition and your loans. This isn't just about covering costs anymore, it's about prestige. Colleges are caught in a cycle of chasing rankings in magazines like US News and World Report. Higher spending often leads to higher rankings, which attracts more applicants, which allows them to be more selective and charge even more. It's a self-perpetuating cycle of prestige and price hikes. The administrative side of universities has also exploded. We now have more deans, provosts, and administrative staff than ever before, all earning six-figure salaries. The focus has shifted from education to running a massive, complex business, and the students have become the primary customers and the primary source of revenue. The result is a system where there is no incentive for colleges to control their costs. In fact, it's the opposite. The more they charge, the more perceived value they have. And with a seemingly endless supply of federal and private loan money available to students, there's no ceiling on how high tuition can go. This is the core of the problem. Student loans didn't just help students afford college, they enabled colleges to become unaffordable in the first place. The medicine designed to cure the disease of inaccessibility ended up creating a new, more virulent strain of the illness hyperinflation in the cost of a degree. Let's go back to that pivotal moment in 1965, the Higher Education Act. This is where the government made a fateful decision that would change everything. Instead of lending money to students directly, they decided to bring in the banks. To convince private lenders to get into the student loan game, the government offered them a deal that was too good to refuse: a federal guarantee. They told the banks, "Go ahead, lend to these 18-year-old kids with no credit history and no income. If they fail to pay you back, we, the taxpayers, will cover the loss." It was a win-win for the banks. They got all the upside of the interest payments with none of the downside of the risk. This government guarantee completely distorted the market. In a normal lending situation, a bank is very careful about who it lends money to. They check your credit score, your income, your ability to repay. They have skin in the game. If you default, they lose money. But with student loans, that risk was gone. Lenders had every incentive to sign up as many borrowers as possible, for as much money as possible, regardless of the student's major, the school's graduation rate, or the student's future job prospects. It was like a bartender being told he could serve as many drinks as he wanted, and if anyone got sick, someone else would clean it up and pay the bill. This system, known as the Federal Family Education Loan Program, or FFELP, dominated student lending for decades. It turned student loans into a massively profitable, risk-free industry. Companies like Sallie Mae, which we've talked about, became giants. They weren't just servicing loans, they were packaging them up and selling them on Wall Street, just like mortgages. This created a powerful lobbying force in Washington. The banks and private lenders spent millions of dollars every year to make sure the system stayed just the way it was, with the profits flowing to them, and the risk staying with the government and the students. It wasn't until 2010, with the passage of the Affordable Care Act, that the FFEL program was finally eliminated. The government went back to lending to students directly, cutting out the private banks as the middlemen for federal loans. But the damage was already done. For over 40 years, the government guarantee had fueled the tuition rocket ship, enriched a generation of private lenders, and helped bury millions of students under a mountain of debt. The architecture of the crisis was built on this single fatal flaw: removing risk from the lender and placing it squarely on the shoulders of young people and the American taxpayer. If the government guarantee was the gasoline, the 2005 bankruptcy bill was the match that lit the whole thing on fire. Before 2005, it was difficult, but not impossible, to get student loans discharged in bankruptcy. You had to prove that repaying the loan would cause an undue hardship. But in 2005, Congress passed the Bankruptcy Abuse Prevention and Consumer Protection Act. That name is a masterclass in political spin. The bill, heavily lobbied for by the banking and credit card industries, made it much harder for anyone to declare bankruptcy. And buried deep inside this legislation was a provision that changed the game for student loans forever. This new law expanded the undue hardship standard to include private student loans. Before this, that tough standard only applied to federal loans. Now, it applied to all of them. This meant that both the loan you got from the government and the high-interest loan you got from a private bank were essentially inescapable. You could rack up huge gambling debts, get sued for a business deal gone bad, or run up your credit cards, and bankruptcy could offer you a fresh start. But the loan you took out to better yourself through education, that debt was now in a special protected class. It would follow you to the grave. This single change had a profound effect. It made student loans one of the most secure assets a bank could possibly hold. Think about it from a lender's perspective. You now have a product that is backed by the full faith and credit of the US government and is virtually impossible for the borrower to escape through bankruptcy. This is the holy grail of lending. It gave lenders even more confidence to lend recklessly, knowing that borrowers were trapped with no way out. It removed the last consumer protection, the final emergency exit that borrowers had. The consequences were immediate and devastating. With no fear of bankruptcy, lenders could charge higher interest rates and add on more fees, knowing the borrower had no leverage. It also supercharged the for-profit college industry, as they could now saddle their students with massive amounts of private loan debt, with little fear of it being discharged. The 2005 bill effectively turned student borrowers into a captive market. It cemented the power of the lenders and stripped students of their most fundamental rights as consumers. It was the moment the system went from being broken to being actively predatory. As the student loan system evolved, a new kind of predator emerged, perfectly adapted to this new environment: the for-profit college. Schools like the University of Phoenix, ITT Tech, and Corinthian colleges saw a massive business opportunity. They weren't in the business of education, they were in the business of financial aid. Their entire model was built around one thing: getting as much federal student loan and grant money as possible. They targeted vulnerable populations, veterans, single parents, low-income students, with aggressive and often deceptive marketing, promising them a fast track to a high-paying career. These for-profit colleges were, honestly, masters of exploiting the system. There was a rule, known as the 90-10 rule, which stated that for-profit schools had to get at least 10% of their revenue from sources other than federal student aid. This was meant to be a quality check, to ensure the schools were providing an education valuable enough that people would pay for it out of pocket. But the schools found a loophole. GI Bill benefits for veterans didn't count as federal aid. So they began targeting veterans with extreme prejudice, seeing them as walking dollar signs who could help them meet the 10% requirement, while they got the other 90% from federal loans taken out by their other students. The product they were selling was often worthless. These schools typically had sky-high tuition, abysmal graduation rates, and degrees that were not respected by employers. Students would enroll, be pushed to take out the maximum amount of federal and private loans, and then be left high and dry. Many would drop out, and those who did graduate often found they couldn't get the jobs they were promised. But the for-profit college had already gotten its money. The student was left with a useless degree and a mountain of debt that, thanks to the 2005 bankruptcy law, they could never escape. The stories from schools like ITT Tech and Corinthian, which both collapsed under the weight of federal investigations and lawsuits, are heartbreaking. Students were lied to about job placement rates, pressured into taking on crippling debt, and left with nothing to show for it. It was a factory designed to convert the hopes of students into profits for shareholders. The rise and fall of the for-profit college machine is a direct consequence of the evolution of our student loan system. It's what happens when you create a system with guaranteed government money, no risk for lenders, and no escape for borrowers. It creates the perfect hunting ground for predators. So, you walked across that stage, you tossed your cap in the air, you have the diploma, and now, the grace period is over. The first bill arrives. It's a stark black and white reminder that the party is over and the 10, 20, or even 30-year hangover is about to begin. This is the moment the abstract numbers on your financial aid letter become terrifyingly real. Suddenly a huge chunk of your monthly income is spoken for before you even get it. This isn't just an inconvenience, it's a fundamental restructuring of your adult life. You're starting the race of life, but you're 50 yards behind the starting line with an anchor chained to your leg. Welcome to the debt sentence. This debt dictates everything. It's the ghost in the machine of your daily decisions. Think about all the classic milestones of American adulthood. Buying your first home. Good luck saving for a down payment when hundreds or even thousands of dollars are flying out of your account every month to your loan servicer. A 2022 study found that student debt delays homeownership by an average of 7 years. People are stuck renting for longer or worse, moving back into their childhood bedrooms. The boomerang generation isn't a quirky lifestyle choice. It's an economic necessity, driven by the crushing weight of student loans. It's hard to feel like an adult when you're arguing with your dad about the thermostat settings again. The impact goes far beyond home ownership. It reshapes the very fabric of family life. People are putting off getting married. They are delaying having children. How can you even think about the cost of diapers and daycare when you're staring down a loan balance the size of a luxury SUV? The Federal Reserve has found a direct link. A $1,000 increase in student loan debt causes a 2% drop in the likelihood of a young woman having a child. This isn't just a personal problem, it's a demographic one. We've created a system where pursuing an education, the very thing that should enable a better future, forces you to sacrifice building that future for yourself and your family. And let's talk about that a little bit more. You are not just paying for your education, you are paying for a system that has fundamentally altered what it means to be young in America. The timeline has shifted. The goalposts have moved so far back they're in another stadium. The freedom to take risks, to start a small business, to fail and try again. That freedom is a luxury that many indebted graduates simply cannot afford. Instead of a launch pad, their degree becomes a straitjacket, locking them into a rigid path of just trying to stay afloat. The American dream is predicated on upward mobility, but for millions, student debt is a powerful force of downward gravity. The financial burden of student loans is immense, but the invisible price tag, the cost to your mental health, can be even higher. This isn't just about stress. It's a daily, grinding, soul-crushing weight. Imagine waking up every single morning knowing you owe a massive amount of money that you may never fully pay off. It's a constant, low-grade hum of anxiety that underlies everything you do. Every purchase, from a cup of coffee to a new pair of shoes, is filtered through the lens of your debt. Should I be spending this? Could this $5 go towards my loan? It creates a constant state of financial scarcity and panic, even if you have a decent job. This anxiety often morphs into a deep sense of shame. We live in a society that fetishizes success and stigmatizes financial struggle. Even though over 43 million Americans have student debt, it feels like a deeply personal failure. People are embarrassed to talk about it with their friends, their partners, and especially their parents. They feel like they did something wrong, like they were irresponsible for taking on the debt in the first place, even though they were just following the script they were handed. This shame leads to isolation. You suffer in silence, convinced you're the only one drowning, while everyone else seems to be swimming along just fine. But look around. The water is full of people just trying to keep their heads above the surface. The constant pressure and isolation can lead to something far more dangerous: hopelessness. When you make payments for years and see your loan balance actually increase because of capitalized interest, it feels like you're running on a hamster wheel. You put in the effort, you do the work, but you get nowhere. This can lead to severe depression and a sense of being trapped with no way out. Studies have shown a direct correlation between high student debt and poorer psychological well-being. In the most tragic cases, this financial despair has been linked to suicidal ideation. Let that sink in. We have created a system for funding education that is literally making people feel like their lives are not worth living. This mental health crisis is the unspoken consequence of the student loan industry. We talk about the economic impact, but we rarely discuss the emotional devastation. It affects your self-esteem, your relationships, and your ability to feel optimistic about the future. It's a public health issue hiding within a financial one. The system isn't just taking your money, it's taking your peace of mind. It's robbing an entire generation of the joy and excitement that should come with starting a new life. The pursuit of a degree shouldn't come with a side of chronic anxiety and clinical depression, yet for millions, that is the reality of their educational investment. Remember when you were a kid and people asked what you wanted to be when you grew up? You'd say an astronaut, a veterinarian, a firefighter. No one ever said, "I want to be a mid-level marketing associate at a company I don't care about because it's the only way I can make my student loan payments." But that is the reality for countless graduates. Student debt acts like a pair of golden handcuffs, chaining you to a career path not out of passion, but out of financial necessity. The need to earn a high salary to service your debt can completely override your actual interests and talents, forcing you into a job you hate just to make ends meet. Think about the ripple effect of this. We need more teachers, we need more social workers, we need more public defenders, nurses in rural areas, and artists who challenge our society. But these crucial, often lower-paying public service jobs become an impossible choice for someone graduating with $50,000 or $100,000 in debt. You might have a burning passion to teach in an underserved community, but when the starting salary is $40,000 and your loan payments are $600 a month, the math just doesn't work, so you take the corporate sales job instead. The debt crisis is actively draining our country of its most vital talent, pushing our brightest minds away from careers that serve the public good and toward those that simply serve the bottom line. This career distortion doesn't just impact public service, it stifles innovation and entrepreneurship. Starting a business is inherently risky. It often requires you to go without a salary for a while to pour your own money into your idea. How can you take that kind of risk when you have a massive, non-dischargeable loan payment due on the first of every month? You can't. The debt forces you to choose the stable, predictable path, even if you have a world-changing idea. The next Steve Jobs or Sarah Blakely might be working in a cubicle right now, their brilliant idea collecting dust, because their student loans have made the risk of entrepreneurship simply too high. Ultimately, this system creates a massive misallocation of human capital. It's like having a team of brilliant artists and telling them they can only paint fences. Society as a whole loses out. We lose the potential for new businesses, new art, and dedicated public servants. The individual loses out too, spending their one precious life in a career that doesn't fulfill them, all because of a decision they made when they were 17 years old. Your major, and the debt you took on to pay for it, becomes your master. It dictates your future in a way that is profoundly limiting and deeply contrary to the entire purpose of an education, which should be to expand your horizons, not narrow them. The student loan crisis isn't just a collection of individual sob stories, it's a macroeconomic disaster hiding in plain sight. This isn't a bug in our economic system, it's a massive drag that is slowing down the entire machine. When an entire generation is buried under $1.7 trillion in debt, they can't participate in the economy in the way they're supposed to. Think about it. Consumer spending accounts for nearly 70% of the US economy. But if a huge portion of the population has a significant part of their income diverted to loan payments, that's money they aren't spending on cars, furniture, appliances, or going out to dinner. It's a drain on aggregate demand. This lack of spending has a direct impact on businesses, both large and small. If young people aren't buying cars, car companies sell fewer cars. If they aren't buying homes, the construction industry, real estate agents, and home improvement stores all suffer. This isn't theoretical. It's happening right now. The housing market, which has historically been a key driver of economic growth, is feeling the effects. As we've discussed, indebted graduates are delaying homeownership for years, which means billions of dollars in economic activity are being put on hold. The debt is like a giant wet blanket smothering the embers of economic growth before they can catch fire. Furthermore, this crisis exacerbates wealth inequality. For those who can afford to pay for college without loans, they start their adult lives at zero. They can immediately start saving, investing, and building wealth. But for the millions who have to borrow, they start their lives deep in the negative. They are not just paying back the principal, they are paying interest, which is essentially a transfer of wealth from the younger, less wealthy borrower to the older, wealthier lender or investor. Over a lifetime, this creates a massive divergence in wealth accumulation. It widens the gap between the haves and the have-nots, making social mobility even more difficult. The long-term consequences for the nation's fiscal health are also dire. While we often think of this as a private debt problem, a huge portion of it is federal debt. If large numbers of borrowers are on income-driven repayment plans where their payments don't cover the interest, the total federal loan portfolio continues to grow. If these loans are eventually forgiven after 20 or 25 years, as some plans promise, the taxpayer will be on the hook for billions. The system has created a debt bomb that not only cripples individual borrowers and drags down the economy, but also poses a significant long-term risk to the federal budget. It's a crisis that ripples outward, touching every corner of our economic life. One of the most insidious impacts of the student loan crisis is the deep and bitter generational divide it has created. You've probably heard it from a parent, an uncle, or a commenter on the internet. I worked my way through college flipping burgers. Why can't you? This sentiment, while often well-intentioned, is born from a complete misunderstanding of how drastically the world has changed. It creates a narrative that young people today are lazy or entitled, when in reality, they are playing a completely different and infinitely harder game. It's not that they lack a work ethic, it's that the work ethic of the past no longer computes with the economic reality of the present. Let's look at the numbers. In 1970, the average annual tuition at a four-year public university was about $394. The federal minimum wage was $1.60 an hour. That means a student could work a minimum wage job for the summer, about 246 hours or 6 weeks of full-time work, and pay for their entire year of tuition. Now, fast forward to today. The average in-state tuition at a public university is over $10,000. The federal minimum wage is $7.25. A student would have to work almost 1,400 hours, that's 35 weeks of full-time work, just to cover tuition. It's not just difficult, it's mathematically impossible. The I worked my way through college story is a fairy tale from a bygone era. This disconnect creates a profound lack of empathy and understanding. Older generations who benefited from massive public investment in higher education and graduated with little to no debt often view the current crisis as a series of individual bad choices rather than a systemic failure. This leads to political gridlock. It's hard to build support for solutions like widespread debt forgiveness or tuition-free college when a significant portion of the electorate believes the problem is one of personal responsibility. It pits generations against each other, with young people feeling abandoned and misunderstood and older people feeling resentful and dismissive. This isn't just about hurt feelings, it's about the erosion of the social contract. There used to be an implicit promise in America: if you work hard and get an education, you will have the opportunity for a better life than your parents. That promise has been broken. For many young people today, they have more education than their parents, but far less economic security and opportunity. They are the first generation in modern American history projected to be worse off financially than their predecessors. This isn't just a policy failure, it's a moral one. The student loan crisis has created two different Americas, divided not just by wealth, but by the year you were born. So, who is actually cashing in on this $1.7 trillion dumpster fire? Let's follow the money. And a whole lot of it leads directly back to the ivy-covered gates of the colleges and universities themselves. Think about it. In this whole equation, they are the primary product sellers. They set the price, and for the last few decades, they've been raising that price with, honestly, reckless abandon. As we've established, the flood of easy-to-get federal and private loan money created a situation where schools had absolutely no incentive to keep costs down. In fact, they had every incentive to do the exact opposite. More loans meant they could charge more for tuition, and charge more they did. This isn't just about covering the basics anymore. Your tuition isn't just paying your professor's salary, it's funding a massive administrative bloat. Universities now have armies of vice presidents, associate deans, and provosts of strategic initiatives, all pulling down hefty six-figure salaries. It's paying for multi-million-dollar vanity projects, from state-of-the-art football stadiums to luxury dorms with resort-style swimming pools. These amenities aren't designed to improve your education. They are designed to lure you in, to win a marketing war against other colleges. They are selling you a lifestyle, a 4-year country club experience, and you are paying for it with debt that will last for decades. The schools have become masterful at playing the game. They benefit from a perception of being non-profit, public good institutions. But many operate like massive, for-profit corporations. They have huge endowments, often worth billions of dollars, that they fiercely protect. They lobby Congress to make sure the student loan spigot stays wide open. They are the ultimate winners because they get their money up front. The moment you enroll, your loan money is wired directly to their bank account. They face zero risk. If you drop out or can't find a job after graduation and default on your loan, that's not their problem. They already got paid. This creates a shocking lack of accountability. A car company that produces a defective vehicle that injures its driver faces lawsuits and recalls. But a university that charges $200,000 for a degree that leads to a $35,000 a year job faces zero consequences. They have all of the reward and none of the risk. They get to cash the check, build their shiny new buildings, and pay their president a 7-figure salary, all while the student and their family are left holding the bag. In the casino of higher education, the house, the university, has rigged the game so that it always wins. If colleges are the ones selling the expensive product, there's another group of winners who have gotten rich by financing the sale. These are the middlemen, the private lenders, the loan servicing companies, and their friends on Wall Street. For decades, private banks like Wells Fargo and Chase and specialized lenders like Sallie Mae made a fortune originating government-backed federal loans. It was the perfect business model: lend out money with the government's guarantee, collect the interest payments, and face absolutely no risk if the borrower defaulted. The taxpayer would just foot the bill. It was a license to print money, courtesy of you and me. Even after the government stopped using private banks to issue federal loans in 2010, the private loan market is still booming. These lenders swoop in to cover the gap when federal loans aren't enough to cover the sky-high tuition. They can charge higher variable interest rates and offer far fewer consumer protections. And thanks to that 2005 bankruptcy law, their product is virtually inescapable. They have successfully lobbied to create a special class of debt that is more protected than almost any other. They win by trapping borrowers in high-interest loans with little to no flexibility, ensuring a steady stream of profits for years to come. Then you have the loan servicers. These are the companies the government pays to manage your federal loans, the ones that send you the bills and process your payments. Companies like Navient, Nelnet, and the Pennsylvania Higher Education Assistance Agency, or PHEA. You might think their job is to help you, but their real customer is the government. They are paid a flat fee per borrower, regardless of how well they serve them. In fact, multiple lawsuits have alleged that these companies have systematically steered borrowers away from more affordable repayment plans like income-driven repayment because it's more complicated and less profitable for them. They win by cutting corners and doing the bare minimum, often at the direct expense of the borrower. And let's not forget Wall Street. For years, student loans, both federal and private, were bundled together into financial products called student loan asset-backed securities, or SLABs. These are similar to the mortgage-backed securities that caused the 2008 financial crisis. These SLABs were sold to investors all over the world. Investment banks made huge fees packaging and selling these deals. Hedge funds and pension funds bought them up because they were seen as a super safe investment. After all, what's a safer bet than a loan that is government guaranteed and cannot be discharged in bankruptcy? Wall Street wins by turning student debt into a commodity, a financial instrument to be traded for profit, completely detached from the human lives it impacts. Now for the easy part, who loses in this whole mess? It's you, it's your family, it's your future. The primary losers are, without a doubt, the millions of students and graduates who are shackled with this debt. They are the ones who have to put their lives on hold. They are the ones who can't buy a house, start a business, or save for retirement. They are the ones who are forced into jobs they hate just to make the monthly payment. They are the ones who suffer the silent mental and emotional toll of living under a cloud of inescapable debt. They followed the rules, did what they were told, and were punished for it. Families lose too. This crisis isn't just about 22-year-olds, it's about their parents and even their grandparents. A growing number of parents are taking out massive Parent Plus loans, which are federal loans with higher interest rates and fewer protections, to help their children afford school. This means parents are sacrificing their own retirement savings, putting their own financial futures at risk. And for the millions of students who needed a co-signer for a private loan, their parents are legally on the hook if they can't pay. The debt becomes a family burden, creating stress and tension, and transferring financial instability from one generation to the next. And finally, the American taxpayer loses. Big time. This is the dirty little secret of the government-backed loan system. When a borrower with a federal loan defaults, the government, meaning the taxpayer, pays the bill. When borrowers are on income-driven repayment plans where their payments are too low to cover the accruing interest, the national debt grows. Any future plan for widespread loan forgiveness, which seems increasingly necessary to solve the crisis, will ultimately be funded by taxpayers. We are all paying for this broken system, whether we went to college or not. We are subsidizing the inflated tuition of universities and the profits of lenders. The system is designed to have a clear loser, the borrower. But the damage is far more widespread. The student loan crisis has created a generation of losers, burdened by debt and unable to fully participate in the economy. It has strained families, pitting parents' retirement against their children's education. And it has placed a massive, hidden liability on the American taxpayer. The so-called winners have profited by offloading all of the risk onto the most vulnerable individuals and onto society as a whole. It's a system where the profits are privatized but the losses are socialized, and that's a losing game for almost everyone. One of the most pervasive myths you'll hear is that student loans are good debt. Financial advisors, guidance counselors, and even your own family might have told you this. The logic goes something like this. Unlike bad debt like credit card debt, which you use to buy depreciating assets like a flat-screen TV, student loan debt is an investment in yourself. It's for your education, which will increase your earning potential for the rest of your life. It's a noble, responsible kind of debt that will pay for itself over time. It sounds logical, right? It's a comforting story we tell ourselves and young people to make the astronomical price of college feel more palatable and less terrifying. The reality, however, is far more complicated and much darker. While it's true that a college degree on average leads to higher lifetime earnings, this good debt narrative dangerously oversimplifies the situation. It completely ignores the crushing risk involved. If you take out a car loan, you get a car. If you take out a mortgage, you get a house. If things go south, you can sell the asset or give it back to the bank. But with student loans, what's the asset? Your education? You can't sell your degree on eBay. You can't return your knowledge to the university for a refund. The debt is attached to you, personally and permanently, with no underlying collateral to liquidate. Furthermore, the good debt myth assumes a guaranteed return on investment that simply doesn't exist for millions of borrowers. It doesn't account for students who are forced to drop out before finishing their degree, leaving them with the debt but none of the earning power benefits. It doesn't account for graduates who enter a weak job market or whose chosen field doesn't pay enough to service their loans. It also ignores the predatory for-profit colleges that sell worthless degrees, leaving students with debt that is objectively bad by any measure. Debt is debt. When it's preventing you from buying a home or saving for retirement, it doesn't feel very good at all. Ultimately, calling student loans good debt is a dangerous marketing slogan, not a financial reality. It's a tool used to minimize the perceived risk and encourage young people to sign on the dotted line without fully understanding the lifelong consequences. It papers over the cracks of a broken system, shifting the focus from the outrageous cost of college to the supposed wisdom of investing in oneself. The truth is, any debt that has the power to derail your life for decades, that is nearly impossible to discharge in bankruptcy, and that causes widespread economic drag and mental anguish is not good. It's just debt, and in the American system, it's some of the most unforgiving debt there is. Another common myth, often spouted by those who oppose any form of student loan reform, is the personal responsibility fallacy. The argument is simple and seductive. You signed the loan documents, you knew what you were getting into, so you have a moral obligation to pay it back. No one forced you to go to college. This narrative frames the entire student loan crisis as a collection of millions of individual bad decisions. It suggests that if borrowers are struggling, it's because they were lazy, chose a useless major, or lived extravagantly instead of tightening their belts. It places all of the blame squarely on the shoulders of the borrower and absolves the other actors in the system of any complicity. But this argument completely collapses under the slightest scrutiny. Let's be real. We are asking 17 and 18-year-olds, who in many states can't legally sign a contract to rent an apartment or buy a car on their own, to make one of the most complex and significant financial decisions of their entire lives. We're asking them to predict their future career path, their earning potential, and the state of the economy decades into the future. They are navigating a labyrinthine system of financial aid, interest rates, and repayment options with virtually no guidance. To then turn around 10 years later and blame them for not being clairvoyant financial experts is fundamentally dishonest and cruel. The personal responsibility argument also conveniently ignores the massive systemic failures that led us here. It ignores decades of state disinvestment in public universities that caused tuition to skyrocket. It ignores the creation of a risk-free lending environment for banks, thanks to government guarantees. It ignores the 2005 bankruptcy law that stripped borrowers of basic consumer protections. It ignores the predatory practices of for-profit colleges and the confusing, often misleading, behavior of loan servicers. The students didn't create this crisis. They are the victims of it, not the perpetrators. They were responding rationally to the incentives and pressures of a deeply flawed system. Expecting personal responsibility to solve a systemic crisis is like telling someone in a sinking boat to just bail water faster with their hands. Yes, individual choices matter, but they are made within a context. And the context of higher education financing in America is a raging flood of inflated costs, perverse incentives, and dismantled safety nets. Blaming the borrower is a convenient way to avoid addressing the root causes of the problem. It allows policymakers, universities, and lenders to wash their hands of the mess they helped create, while the person drowning is told it's their own fault for not knowing how to swim. When the topic of widespread student loan forgiveness comes up, you immediately hear the chorus of, "But that's not fair!" This myth has two main prongs. The first is that it's unfair to the people who diligently paid off their loans. I sacrificed for years to pay off my debt, the argument goes, so it's a slap in the face to just let everyone else off the hook. The second prong is that it's unfair to the taxpayers who didn't go to college. Why should my tax dollars go to pay off the loans of someone who chose to get a degree? I didn't get that benefit, so why should I pay for it? This fairness argument is emotionally powerful, but it's based on a flawed understanding of both fairness and economics. Let's address the first point. The idea that helping someone today is an insult to someone who struggled yesterday is a crabs-in-a-bucket mentality. It's like refusing to build a bridge over a dangerous river because you had to swim across it yourself. Shouldn't we want the next generation to have it better than we did? True fairness would be to fix a predatory system so that others don't have to endure the same hardships. The sacrifices made by previous borrowers were admirable, but they were sacrifices demanded by a broken system. The goal shouldn't be to force everyone to suffer equally, it should be to end the suffering. Keeping others in debt doesn't retroactively make your past payments feel any better. Now for the argument about taxpayers who didn't go to college. This ignores the fact that taxpayers already foot the bill for the student loan system in countless ways. Taxpayers subsidize the interest on the loans. Taxpayers cover the losses when borrowers default. And most importantly, taxpayers pay the price for the massive economic drag that student debt creates. When an entire generation can't afford to buy homes, start businesses, and spend money, the entire economy suffers. Widespread loan forgiveness isn't just a handout to borrowers, it's an economic stimulus package. It would inject hundreds of billions of dollars into the economy, boosting demand, creating jobs, and benefiting everyone, including those who never went to college. In reality, the student loan system as it currently exists is the truly unfair arrangement. It's unfair to ask teenagers to take on life-altering debt. It's unfair that public education is no longer affordable. It's unfair that a system designed to promote opportunity has become a trap that deepens inequality. Arguing against forgiveness on the grounds of fairness is to defend an indefensible status quo. It mistakes the symptom, the debt, for the disease, which is a fundamentally broken and predatory system of financing higher education. A truly fair solution would be to not only relieve the burden on current borrowers, but to ensure that no future generation is ever put in this impossible position again. Okay, so the system is a mess. It's a raging tire fire inside a dumpster floating on a sea of debt. But you still want, or need to go to college. I get it. This isn't about telling you not to go. It's about going in with your eyes wide open, armed with a financial Kevlar vest. Before you even think about signing that master promissory note, you need to do your homework. First, exhaust every other possible option. I'm talking scholarships, grants, work study. Fill out the FAFSA as early as possible. Then, hit the scholarship search engines like you're trying to find the last roll of toilet paper in a pandemic. Apply for everything, even the weird, obscure ones. The Tall Club's International Scholarship, the Stuck at Prom Duct Tape Scholarship, go for it. Every dollar you get in free money is a dollar you don't have to pay back with interest. Next, you need to be brutally realistic about the cost of the school versus the potential payoff. This is where you become a detective. Research the heck out of the schools you're considering. What is their graduation rate? What is the average starting salary for graduates with your major from that specific school? The Department of Education's College Scorecard website is your new best friend. It has this data. Don't just fall for the glossy brochure with the happy students playing frisbee on the quad. Is a $250,000 degree from a private liberal arts college to become a poet a wise financial decision? Probably not. A cheaper in-state public school might not have the same brand name prestige, but it could save you from a lifetime of debt-induced regret. If you absolutely must borrow, and let's face it, most people do, stick to federal loans like your life depends on it. Because it kind of does. Remember our breakdown? Federal loans have fixed interest rates and borrower protections like income-driven repayment plans. They are the lesser of two evils. Avoid private loans like they're a pyramid scheme pitched to you by your weird cousin. They are the Wild West of lending, with variable rates and zero protections. If the federal loans don't cover the full cost, you need to have a serious conversation. Is this school truly worth taking on high-interest, unforgiving private debt? The answer is almost always no. Find a cheaper school. Take a gap year to work and save. Go to community college for 2 years first. It's a much better option than inviting the private loan shark into your financial life. Finally, borrow only what you absolutely need, not the maximum they offer you. The school will approve you for a certain amount to cover the full cost of attendance, which includes things like travel and personal expenses. It's tempting to take it all. You get that refund check and it feels like free money. It is not free money. It is expensive, interest-accruing, long-term debt money. Make a budget, a real one. Figure out the bare minimum you need to live on and borrow only that amount. Every $1,000 you don't borrow now is thousands of dollars you'll save in interest payments down the road. Be disciplined. Be ruthless. Your future self, who might want to, buy a house or afford to have kids, will thank you. Alright, so maybe it's too late. You're already in the system, you've graduated or you're about to, and the debt is real. The bills are coming. Don't panic. You have options, but you need to be proactive. The worst thing you can do is stick your head in the sand. Ignoring your loans won't make them go away. It will just make them bigger and angrier. Your first move is to get organized. Figure out exactly who you owe, how much you owe, what your interest rates are, and who your loan servicer is. You can find all of your federal loan information on the official federal student aid website, studentaid.gov. This is your mission control. Know your enemy. Once you have the lay of the land, you need to pick a repayment plan. The default is the 10-year standard repayment plan. If you can afford it, great. You'll pay the least amount of interest over time. But for most people, that monthly payment is way too high. This is where you need to learn about income-driven repayment plans. Plans like Save, Pay, and IBR cap your monthly payment at a percentage of your discretionary income. This can lower your monthly bill from a soul-crushing $800 to a more manageable $150. Yes, you might pay more in interest over the long haul, and any forgiven amount could be taxed, but it's a critical lifeline that can keep you from defaulting. Your loan servicer is supposed to help you with this, but you need to be your own best advocate. Call them, get on their website, and apply. Now let's talk about interest. It's the monster that never sleeps. If you get a raise, a bonus, or a tax refund, your first instinct might be to treat yourself. Resist. Throw that extra money at your highest interest loan. This is called the avalanche method. By targeting the loan with the highest interest rate first, you save the most money over time. Even an extra $50 a month can make a huge difference, shaving years and thousands of dollars off your repayment journey. Also, sign up for autopay. Most lenders will give you a small interest rate reduction, usually 0.25%, for letting them automatically deduct the payment from your bank account. It's not much, but every little bit helps. It also ensures you never miss a payment, which is crucial for your credit score. Finally, never, ever stop fighting for your rights and for a better system. Stay informed about changes in student loan policy. See if you qualify for any forgiveness programs like public service loan forgiveness, if you work for the government or a nonprofit. This program has been a bureaucratic nightmare, but recent changes have made it easier to qualify. Keep meticulous records of your employment and payments, and talk about your debt. The shame only has power when it's kept in the dark. Share your story. Support organizations that are fighting for reform. The more we normalize this conversation and demand change, the more pressure we put on policymakers to actually fix this catastrophic mess for good. Your personal battle is part of a much larger war. We've been on a journey, haven't we? We've seen how a noble idea, a plan to launch a generation of rocket scientists, morphed into a $1.7 trillion crisis. We've unmasked the winners, the universities with their lazy rivers, the lenders with their risk-free profits, the servicers with their confusing bureaucracy, and we've met the losers, you, your family, your future, and the American economy itself. We've debunked the myths that this is good debt or a simple matter of personal responsibility. The truth is, the system isn't just broken. It was designed this way. It's a feature, not a bug, that the game is tilted so heavily against the student. It's a system that has fundamentally betrayed its original promise. The student loan crisis is more than just a financial issue. It is a moral one. It asks a fundamental question about who we are as a society. Do we believe that education is a public good, an investment in our collective future that should be accessible to all? Or is it a consumer product, a luxury item sold to the highest bidder, with the risk entirely on the shoulders of the young and the hopeful? For decades, we have chosen the latter. We have allowed the pursuit of knowledge to become a high-stakes gamble, a debt sentence that dictates careers, delays families, and crushes the dreams of an entire generation before they even have a chance to take flight. This is not sustainable. A nation that saddles its best and brightest with crippling debt is a nation that is eating its own seed corn. It is actively choosing to have fewer entrepreneurs, fewer teachers, fewer doctors in rural areas, and fewer innovators. It is choosing to have a weaker economy, greater inequality, and a more divided society. We are watching the American dream, that foundational promise of upward mobility, being dismantled one student loan at a time. The weight of this crisis is not just an anchor on individual lives, it's an anchor on the progress of our entire country. We are at a tipping point, a moment of reckoning where we must decide if we want to continue down this destructive path. The choice we face is stark. We can continue to accept the status quo. We can keep telling 17-year-olds to sign their lives away, keep pretending this is a series of individual failures, and watch as the crisis deepens, the debt balloons, and the social fabric tears. Or, we can choose a different path. We can demand a system where education is once again a ladder of opportunity, not a pit of debt. We can recognize that this is a collective problem that requires a collective solution. The future of a generation and the economic health of our nation hangs in the balance. The choice is ours, and the time to make it is now. So what do? We fight back. This is not a moment for despair, it is a call to action. The path forward requires a two-pronged attack. We must provide relief for those already drowning, and we must rebuild the system so that no one drowns in the future. For the 43 million Americans already shackled by this debt, we need bold, comprehensive relief. This means broad-based student loan cancellation, not just $10,000. We need a meaningful reduction of the burden that will act as a massive economic stimulus, freeing up an entire generation to finally start their lives, buy homes, launch businesses, and participate fully in the economy. It's the fastest way to undo decades of economic damage. At the same time, we have to fix the broken system that created this mess. This means restoring state funding for public universities to bring down the sticker price of tuition in the first place. We need to hold colleges accountable for their outcomes. If a school has low graduation rates and high default rates, they shouldn't be eligible for federal student aid. We need to simplify the repayment system, making income-driven repayment automatic and easy to access for all federal borrowers. And we must restore the basic consumer protections, like the ability to discharge student loans in bankruptcy, that exist for every other type of debt. We have to treat students like citizens, not cash cows. This fight will not be easy. The higher education industrial complex, the universities, the lenders, the lobbyists, is powerful and deeply entrenched. They will spend millions to protect their profits and preserve the status quo. They will tell you that these ideas are too radical, too expensive, too unfair. They will try to divide us, to pit borrower against taxpayer and generation against generation. They are counting on your silence, they are counting on your shame, they are counting on you to believe that this is your own personal failure, so you will suffer quietly and never question the system that trapped you. We cannot let them win. This is your fight. Whether you have debt, are about to take on debt, or simply believe in a fairer future, your voice is critical. Talk about your debt, share your story, organize, call your representatives, demand that they treat this like the national emergency it is. The power to change this system doesn't just lie in Washington, it lies with us. It lies in our collective refusal to accept a future where a college degree is a financial life sentence. We must transform ourselves from a generation of debtors into a generation of dreamers and fighters, ready to reclaim the promise that was stolen from us, that education should be the key that unlocks your future, not the cage that traps you in your past.